When Senator Ted Cruz of Texas walks through CPAC, you bring a lot of company with you. You're still a very, very popular figure here, Senator Cruz.
Well, I love the people at CPAC. These are the activists. These are the people who work. These are especially the young people who have the passion for liberty, the passion for defending the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And I have been coming to CPAC many, many years, and there are few things that are more uplifting and invigorating for the spirit than seeing the energy and passion.
Have you noticed this year, it seems to me the crowd is actually even younger than it has been in past years. Is there a hunger within younger college students because all they're getting is, well, anti-liberty messages?
Well, you look at what's happening in our universities where they've really gone nutty. I mean the active censorship of the extreme left. Listen, it's really a sign of weakness. If you believe what you're saying, then you're not afraid of a dissenting voice.
Right.
The socialists don't want to actually talk about substance because their ideas don't work. Socialism has produced poverty and suffering for billions across the planet. So they can't defend it on the merits. I tell young people all the time, you want to know what socialism is? Take a look at Venezuela. Venezuela was once one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America. You now have people starving and eating food out of trash cans. The beauty of free market principles, of conservative ideas, is that our ideas work, which means that we're perfectly happy to debate any left-wing numbskull. And I do think young people, when their schools and universities are trying to censor and stop them from hearing an opposing view, I think a lot of young people are smart enough to say, wait a second, what is that telling me? What are they hiding from me? And I think the people here know. They know that freedom works and it's powerful.
I'd love to ask you, Senator Cruz, during the 2016 campaign, a lot of conservatives were concerned that if Donald Trump became the de facto leader of the Republican Party and President of the United States, he couldn't make impassioned arguments about freedom and liberty because he doesn't have the same pedigree as a conservative. Given that and given many concerns we had, what did you make of his speech that he gave about Venezuela in South Florida just last week?
Look, I was very glad to see the president standing up, addressing Venezuela, and he has been making the point that Venezuela, it's not that socialism didn't work, it's that it worked exactly as it always does. That point is exactly right, and I'm glad to see the president making it. I also think there's an obligation for all of us, for you, for me, for every activist here, that waging the battle in the arena of ideas is all of our responsibility. You have the universities, you have journalists in the mainstream media, you have Hollywood all trying to propagandize. And so we need all of us to come back. And I can tell you my priority the next 2 years, my number one priority is winning people's hearts and minds, not the same 2.5 million people who are watching Fox News each night who are preaching to the choir, but reaching young people, reaching Hispanics and African Americans and women, and the people whose lives are impacted by these policies, but who aren't necessarily hearing the message. And we need to be using humor, we need to be using stories, we need to be defending ideas that work.
Taking it out of the realm of ideas and bringing it right into policy, we're talking about Venezuela quite a bit in terms of how the idea of socialism failed them. What is America's role there now? I mean, this is a nation in turmoil.
Yes.
We saw conflicts on the border with Colombia. From your position as a United States Senator, you may be called upon to have your voice heard about our policy, even deploying military. Do we have a role there with our military?
Well, I think we have an important role, and I think the approach that the President and the administration has been taking has been right. Which is that, number one, Maduro is illegitimate. The election, his last election, was a fraud. The legitimately elected leader of Venezuela is Juan Guaido, because the National Assembly, which is legitimately elected, selected him in that role. And what the president has done, the administration has done, is recognized Guaido as the legitimately elected leader, and Maduro is not. Maduro is a dictator who is violating the law, and after the United States did that, Europe did as well. Countries throughout Europe and across the world have recognized that Maduro is not the legal ruler of Venezuela. He's a dictator using military force to oppress the people.
But dictators don't go quietly. And given that, do we have a role or a responsibility, at the very least, to protect our allies like Colombia in the region as things start to get violent?
Perhaps. But now listen, let me be clear. I'm not calling for military force in Venezuela. Now, here's an exception. There are Americans there. There are Americans on the ground. If Maduro were to make a move and threaten American lives, we would absolutely respond with military force to protect the lives of Americans. And I don't think Maduro will do that because he understands that we have a responsibility to protect Americans. Short of that, I don't think we should be intervening militarily, but I think the administration is exactly right that we should be using economic sanctions, in particular sanctions on their oil, to put pressure. And, you know, you said dictators don't go quietly. Well, sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. If you look at Venezuela right now, there are roughly 3,000 generals in the Venezuelan military. I've met with the leadership, the democratically elected leadership of Venezuela just the last couple of weeks in D.C. I'm a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Those Venezuelan generals are deciding right now where they're going to stand, who they're going to align with. And if they make the decision that Maduro's on his way out, he's illegitimate, he's lost, and he's going out, and Guaido and a freely and fairly elected leader is on his way in, if the generals flip, Maduro's done. And so much of what we are doing and should be doing is a combination of carrot and stick for those generals. Carrot of, you should be standing with the democratically elected, legitimate leadership of Venezuela, but also stick. If you stand instead with a dictator, there will be consequences and sanctions directed at you, Mr. General, that it's going to have real consequences.
Senator Ted Cruz is our guest from Texas. And Senator, over the last couple of months, you've had one of the finest ideas I've seen anyone in Washington come up with. So, of course, it seems like not a whole lot of people are responding. That's to take El Chapo's money, all the money that we seized from this murderous thug, and use that to protect our borders. Why is that not... What's the resistance to that idea?
Look, this is the essence of common sense. Yes. The legislation I introduced would take all the money criminally forfeited from El Chapo and from other drug lords and use that to build the wall and secure the border.
Yes, it's blood money. Why not put it to some good use and protect American citizens?
It makes enormous sense. We haven't voted on it in the Senate. I'm continuing to press for it to come up for a vote. And one of the values of voting on it is it will put the lie to the position of the Democrats. You know, a lot of Democrats, as we were debating the wall, they said, oh, it costs too much. We don't want to spend that much money. Now, set aside for a second that it is very difficult to think of even a single instance where Democrats have ever thought anything costs too much. I mean, they're willing to pour money down any rat hole they can find.
It must have hurt them physically to form those words.
I suspect more than a few of them were twitching as they were saying it. But the beauty of this idea is that if we pass the El Chapo Act, it wouldn't cost a penny of U.S. taxpayer dollars. We could use the billions of dollars. El Chapo's global criminal net worth is estimated to be roughly $14 billion. We can use those ill-gotten gains and those from other drug dealers directly to build the wall and secure the border, and there's a justice to using billions made trafficking narcotics illegally across our border, using them to prevent future narco-traffickers from doing the same.
In the meantime, it looks like a vote that you and your colleagues in the Senate will have to deal with is that House resolution that just passed, trying to prevent the president from declaring a national emergency. How do you plan to vote? And also, do you share the same concerns as many that, well, if a Democrat is president, they'll use that same trick, if you want to use that word, to do something that we wouldn't like?
I absolutely share the concerns about Democratic abuse of power. We've seen it before, and I think we are likely to see it even worse again. Look, how the Senate resolves this, I think the next 2 weeks you're going to see a lot of debates. We've had really robust internal discussions within the Senate. I think that'll continue for the next 2 weeks. I don't know how it will be resolved, but I'll tell you this. Regardless of how it's resolved, the wall is going to be built. It's going to be built, and there are ample funds available that the president has to spend. The $5.7 billion that the president lays out is needed to secure the border. And so what I think matters is the substance, that we build the wall, that we secure the border, and ensuring that those funds are available. I'd like to do it in a way that doesn't set a precedent, that doesn't create a pathway for a Democratic president to abuse power and say to declare an emergency on global warming or on gun control or health care or whatever other else. So let's get the job done, but also ensure that we're protecting liberty going forward.
Senator Cruz, I grew a goatee for a few weeks, and I did one appearance on Tucker Carlson, and my wife said, it's done. I had to shave it. I'm guessing since the beard is still here, Mrs. Cruz is on board with this.
So Heidi started out pretty skeptical. I've never grown a beard before, and it was just over Thanksgiving vacation. I was with the family. I usually don't shave on vacation.
Sure.
And Monday morning, going back to work, I normally pull out the razor. And I just figured out, what the heck, I'm not going to. I will admit I'm having fun with it. Heidi has warmed to it. She started out skeptical. She's warmed to it. But the single best thing about growing the beard is that it is driving lefties on Twitter out of their minds. It is, I'll tell you.
You're owning the libs with your beard. This is brilliant.
I also told Dianne Feinstein, I said, Dianne, next thing I'm going to do is start wearing Birkenstocks and grow a ponytail, and I'm coming after your base, Dianne.
Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.